So good evening and welcome. Glad to have you here tonight, and I appreciate your involvement in your county government. So at this time, I'll call the Paulding County Board of Commissioners meeting to order on this July 25th, 2023. And the new business for the night is, as you know, and why most of you are here, is the public hearing on the proposed tax increase. And so we are going to have a public hearing here. Before I actually open the hearing, I've coordinated with Jason Phillips, our county attorney, to kind of give the purpose of a public hearing to start with. And so we kind of know why we're here.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a public hearing which is required by state law. As a public hearing, this is an opportunity for the members of the citizenry to come and appear before the Board of Commissioners, to express to them your concerns, your opinions, your ideas regarding, in this case, a proposed millage rate increase. Just to be clear, what this is not a question and answer session. Rather, the General Assembly has said this is an opportunity for the citizens of this state to appear and be heard regarding their concerns. In that regard, after the board hears from you, they'll be able to take the input that you have provided and use that in weighing how they will subsequently vote on whether or not to raise the proposed millage rate. So with that having been said, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Phillips, for that background information, that foundation. And so I will call the public hearing, or open the public hearing at this time. And I'm glad, if you don't know Ms. Tabitha Pollard, she is our comptroller, our director of finance, and has a wonderful team across the hall here that work year-round to keep us in good financial bearing. So Tabitha has a lot of experience, and she's prepared a PowerPoint for us. So I'm just going to turn it over to you, Tabitha.
Okay, thank you. The purpose is to educate. We hope that everybody in here and the viewing audience will walk away with a better understanding of what we're doing. Maybe I do know that there are some misconceptions as to why we're here and the process. So hopefully we can clear those up and then give the public the opportunity to speak. So to establish the millage rate is a three-part process. First, we have to have our budget planning. So in early part of the year, January, February, we started budget planning. All the departments put together what they are going to need for the year upcoming, their personnel requests, their capital requests, their operations. We evaluate inflation, what's happened with our power. Same thing that you do at home, pretty much, is to take a look at what our budget is and plan for the upcoming year. Second, we forecast revenues. So we have additional revenues. Property taxes make up about 33% of our revenues, and we have other revenues such as charges for services. So and a lot of are for the, I'm trying to think of a few. So the recreation for, that's the only one that's coming to mind. But for several of our services we provide, we have what? Permitting, that's in licenses, but yes, permitting, fees, fines. We have several different revenues that we will collect. So we forecast those based on what's going on in the area at the time as to whether we expect an increase or expect some decrease. And usually we have a little bit of both. Then we determine what the millage rate's going to be. Well, at that time, the tax assessors has taken the January 1st rate that they've on everybody's properties and consolidated that into a digest around June 1st. Same time frame that the property assessments go out in the mail to the public. From that point, we have to determine what the millage rate is going to be. So we take the property assessments, or the value of the properties, minus any exemptions that are applicable to that particular property, and everybody's different, and multiply that by the millage rate. The millage rate's the rate that's set. It equals $1 for every $1,000 of a property's assessed value. And you multiply that by the property's value to get what the equal of the property taxes. So in 2000, the Georgia legislature passed what's known as Property Taxpayer Bill of Rights. And the Property Taxpayer Bill of Rights was passed to prevent indirect tax increases. In doing so, it leaves a little bit of confusion in the process. But when we consolidate our tax digest, so every parcel, 70,000 plus properties are consolidated to get the tax digest. If that digest is increased, there's usually two reasons for that increase. One's new construction or new development, and the other one is for reassessment or inflation. This is to avoid a increase due to the inflation. So basically what we have to do, or what we're required to do, is to hold these public hearings. If the assessments increased and we don't roll back the millage rate, we're required to hold these public hearings. I think that's a little bit misleading to the public based on the timing, because they got their assessment June 1st, and then in July they see an advertisement that says you're increasing taxes. So it appears that that is two increases coming back to back. This notice is as a result of that assessment. So we're here today. We're holding the second of 3 public hearings. The third one will be August the 8th at 9 a.m. The increase, so Paulding did have an increase in the overall tax digest. It was about 19%. 2% of that was to new construction, new developments, and 17.91 was due to reassessment of those properties. So if you look at the bottom of the last paragraph, the tentative increase will be a millage rate of 4.22. Well, that 4.22 is the same millage rate that you had last year. So there's not an increase to the millage rate, but according to the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, you have to roll that millage rate back by 6.41 in order to avoid a tax increase. So rather than going to 3.579, we've proposed the 4.22, which is equivalent to last year's tax. Okay, a little Paulding County history. So this gives you about 16 years of history. In the early 2000s, before recession, Paulding County was operating on a millage rate of 6.5. During the recession, the digest went down, so the millage rate went up, and the idea from the citizens, the information that we were provided from the citizens was that that's fine. Well, you have a service to provide, and that service costs money, and so we understand that. So, but while you're increasing, when the digest goes down, you need to, see if I said that right. While the digest is reduced, your millage rate goes up, but when your digest comes back up and rebounds, your millage rate should go down. And that's exactly what you can see here we've done from 2013 on. So it's gone from 8.22, and last year we had 4.22, and we're proposing the same 4.22 again this year. Another common question is, well, our understanding is that often we think property taxes are cheaper in other areas around us. So what we did was pull a county-by-county comparison. These are 2022 rates because everybody's doing the same process. We're all going through this process. They'll change somewhat, but this gives you what each jurisdiction passed for 2022. And Paulding is proposing a 6.52. The difference in the 6.52 and the 4.22 is the fire. So fire is, on everybody's tax bill, it's being proposed at 2.3 rather than the 2.5 that we had last year, and the 4.22, if you add those together. The reason I have to add those here to be consistent is that some have a fire district and some don't. So some it's included in the M&O. So to keep that apples to apples comparison, I included all of M&O for regular operations and for fire. Okay, so the property tax breakdown. What we're here today for is this maintenance and operations piece, this 17%. So when you get your property tax or your assessment, you have a school tax, you have a maintenance and operations, and you have a county bond and a fire tax. Your maintenance and operations pays for your sheriff's office. It pays for your recreation. It funds basically the general operations of the county. The county bond, that pays for funds any indebtedness that the county has. And the fire tax was passed in 2006, effective in 2007, and basically the fire department operates with that millage rate. So 69% of your property taxes are school taxes, and again, we're here to talk about the 17% of maintenance and operations. Budget concerns. So why are there any increases? Well, we have the same increases that most of you have. Inflation affects us just as it affects our homes, often in larger scales. So, for instance, our asphalt costs have increased by over 50%. Well, that's a big ticket item for us. So we have our office equipment, we have fuel, we have food for the detention center. We're feeling the impacts just like we do at home, and all of the citizens are feeling them. Labor market. Conversations with departments is we have vacancies. Those vacancies are growing. I can't get attention. I can't get anybody I can't attract the people that I need to hire to do these jobs. And in response to that, in some cases, we're having to contract out. Well, that contract out to be able to provide the service that those employees would generally provide is expensive. And so we hope to be able to remedy that and make corrections in the areas that are necessary. Population growth. So we are serving more citizens today than we were last year. For instance, in 2020, we had about 168,000, I believe, and now we're projected to have just under 180,000 people in the county. So where does the money go? How do we spend it? The county is primarily labor intense. So we have we're service oriented. So our about 56%, if you add the salaries and the benefits, is for personnel. We have officers that have to go out. We have about almost 1,100 employees, I believe, providing those services. And then 32% of that budget is in operations and about 12% is in capital. So where do my tax dollars go? How are those funded? What services do I receive for those tax dollars? And you can see in the green, about 31 to 35% are in public safety. So that's your sheriff's office, it's your detention, it's your marshal, it's your animal control. And the second highest is public works. The large one there is DOT because of the large expenditures, and stormwater, recycling. We have some, our fleet maintenance, and then you have your general government. Well, what's general government? What makes that up? General government is the board, it's finance, it's human resources, it's information technology, it's government buildings, so it's upkeep of all of the facilities. So it's most of your general government touches the other agency, the other functions. Okay, so how is this going to impact the homeowner? And I would assume that that's what most are interested in, is how they're going to be impacted. They realize that everybody's incurring additional expenses. That's okay. We want to provide the services, but how is that going to impact me? So in 2022, if you had a $300,000 home, and I'm using that because that's an average home value in Paulding, or it was a good estimate. And your taxes for your M&O portion, so your maintenance and operations at 4.22, was $497.96. On June 1st, you received an assessment notice. In that assessment notice, your value increased approximately 20%. Now, that's not the same for everybody, some more, some less. Again, I'm dealing with a consolidated digest here, so on average, it was 20%. So your assessment notice provides you a bill, so it gives you an estimate of what those it doesn't provide you a bill, it gives you an estimate of those taxes, and that estimate is $565.48, and it's using last year's millage rate. So the proposal for this year is to leave that estimated millage, or that millage rate, the same. So that bill would be the $565.48. There's no additional increase in between the assessment and the actual bill. The increase is generated from the 2022. So just to let the public know, this wasn't taken lightly. I mean, this is weighed heavily on all of the commission. We've had a lot of discussions about what we can do, how we can reduce that. So what we're trying to do is, the plan to offset that increase was to reduce the debt. So our indebtedness is a fixed rate. It's pretty much the same. It's from year to year. So there's no need to collect an additional amount. So we take this 1.6 and that becomes a 1.2, and that collects enough debt, provides enough funds to pay the indebtedness on an annual basis. The FIRE was a 2.5. Given we started at 2.0 in 2007, we've gone up to 3.1, and then we've reduced that back to 2.5, and now we're proposing a reduction back to 2.3. So if you take all of these, you can see your debt from your assessment notice. Your debt's going to be a little less. Your FIRE's going to be a little less. And that's to hopefully offset the increase that you see from the M&O. Okay, another step that the commission's taken to provide some savings for property taxes and to encourage homestead is the increase in the homestead exemption. So last year was $2,000. The homestead savings was $8.44. This year, the homestead increased to $6,000, and that savings increased to $2,532. And next year, it's in place to go to $10,000, which, if the millage rate is the same, it'd be a savings of $42.22. This year, we have an extra homestead exemption, and this is a part of Governor Kemp's plan to give back to citizens. And so what he's proposed is $18,000 homestead exemption to offset the property taxes owed for each homestead property. So how will that impact you? If you had a value last year of $300,000, that increased to $350,000, keeping all of the numbers the same. Your M&O remains at 4.22. Your debt is reduced from 1.6 to 1.2, and your FIRE is reduced from 2.5 to 2.3. And it's proposed, right now that the school's gonna be moved from 17.75 to 17.675. Your taxes would increase $339.87. Paulding County's $18,000 homestead tax credit equates to $394.11, and the reason it does is because we have a lower millage rate. So if you live in a county that has a higher millage rate, then that number will be a little bit higher. But I think the max is $4,000. Am I right? I mean $400. Am I right? Is the max 400? So your total. I'm not going to say savings, but the difference between your current year and your previous year would be the $54.24 less than it would be in the previous year, all things considered. So that's taking into account the new homestead, and that's taking into account the governor's homestead, and the reduction in the debt, and reduction in the fire, and the reduction in the school. There are a few additional resources, so I will post this video this evening, and you can see some video. The tax assessors has quite a few videos out that are specifically for the homestead grant, and the homestead that are available in Paulding, and how the amount and the process of applying for those, as well as what's happening with the values, so what's driving those values up. And then they have a frequently asked questions, and we also, a couple of years ago, we provided Q Public. So if you go out to the tax assessor's site, or you can go to qpublic.net and look up your specific property. And what you can tell from that is where your money's going. So what jurisdiction is receiving those tax funds. And then based on the budget and the percentage of function is what services you're providing, and how your tax bill actually breaks down to provide those services. And that's all I have, unless y'all have any
Thank you,
questions.
Tabitha. Would any of the commissioners like to add anything? That just want to give that chance if you want to ask a question first. Of course, the biggest part of a public hearing is public participation. So now comes the time when if you would like to come to the podium and give us your name, and to just tell us what your concerns are with the budget, we would be happy for you to do that. And staff will be around at the conclusion of this meeting. This is all staff right here in the front, and the commissioners. So if you have a question, or you want to go a little bit deeper in a one-on-one type setting, then do that. So who wants to go first? Evening.
My name's John Christian. I live here in Paulding County in Dallas. As a resident and as a...
Excuse me for interrupting. John, could you make sure you've written your name down?
Oh, sign it too? Okay. Yes, as a resident here, and also as a builder here in the county, I guess my concern was, when I first heard about it, is we see so much happening right now as far as development, starting developments that are about 50% going on. I have quite a few areas under contract. I have subdivisions that are going on now, phase 1 and phase 2. So in other words, I see plenty of growth coming in, and that'll be coming in next year and everything else, which is revenue, which is money, which is permitting, which is, water permits, sewer tap permits, and everything else. And it has always been part of our marketing. One is, I'm a firm believer in Paulding. That's why we moved here. And we let people know that it's a very economical and lovely place to live. And when I first heard about this, the first thing I thought about is, are we trying to slow it down? Because as we go higher and higher, to me, it'll start slowing it down, but as we bring more people in, it's going to actually fix some of this too. As far as more taxpayers, more property taxes, more permits coming out, more income coming in. It's kind of like our motto with Adams Homes has always been, keep the margins down, don't go high on the profits, but build a lot of them. Don't try and make 20% on each house. Just take it down to 5, 6, 7%, but just build a lot of them. And that will bring it in, because just the cycle. And I just want to say that's what I thought in the beginning when all this came up, and I'm sitting there listening. I'm like, okay, are we trying to slow growth? Because as we go up on things, it will actually slow things down. Because I feel it on my house. When I closed, I didn't actually look into what everything was on the taxes and everything else. And I can't wait till I get 65 now, because I heard that I'm going to lose some of that. But it will slow things down some. And that's why I was wondering, is that the purpose? Are we trying to put the brakes on it a little bit? But I should have filled this out while I was there. But I do thank you for your time, and I did want to mention that. I know that we can't really ask questions, but I just want to throw that out there.
Thank you, John.
Mm-hmm.
While we're waiting for the next person to step forward, I appreciated what you said this morning about shopping in Paulding. You want to reiterate?
So part of our way that we estimate our income is on sales tax, right? So when you shop, please think about this. Shop in Paulding as much as possible, because when you go to Cobb or Bartow or Douglas or wherever to shop, they get that sales tax. That helps their property tax bills go down, although ours are better than theirs. But they're making, they're lower. Ours are lower, which I call better. But they're making a lot of money on sales tax from Paulding County shoppers. The other way that it's so you can't find what you want in Paulding, and that's why you're going to Cobb. The other way you can do it is if you shop online here in Paulding from your Paulding computer and have it shipped to Paulding, then we'll get the sales tax on that also. Just so a lot of people may not know that we collect sales tax both from sales that happen in Paulding and from online sales that are shipped to Paulding and paid from Paulding. So please think about that. Help yourself and help all of us by helping with the sales tax.
Thanks. It's a good word. Who else?
Good afternoon.
This afternoon.
I'm bend down a little bit so you can hear. I'm Greg Willingham. Been living here pretty much most of my life. Last year my taxes went up 30% based off the appraisal. I appealed the appraisal, still went up 30%. My wife and I have lived there for 30 years beside the old home place. We do all the work ourselves. 60 years old. The gentleman here said, hey, in 5 years I can get a cut in school taxes. And that's correct, but it's only half. And then you have to wait to 70 to get the other half. This young lady made the reference about Cobb County and that rate. In Cobb County, when you hit 62, the school tax goes away. So, lived here all my life for the most part. Was born in Carroll County, My dad bought the property where I'm at in 1947. I don't want to go anywhere. But the young lady also made the comment that when we're at home, that we take care of our budget. So last year, when my taxes went up by 30%, my pay increased 3%. I've been where I've been for a long time, got some good raises through the years, make a good living. But my raise last year was 3%. So what did I have to do? I had to cut back. And I guess that's what I'm here to ask you to do, is we all work our budget at home. And sometimes when we don't have the money coming in that we need to come in, we cut back. That extra $800 had to go on something else. I had to find something to cut $800 out of my budget last year because it went up $800. Then I get something in the mail from the governor that says your homestead exemption is going up. Then 2 weeks later, I hear about this. So as you all are making your decisions on what to do, just remember that there's people out there. I can afford to pay my taxes. There's people out there that struggles trying to pay taxes. They bought their house at $150,000, and now their house is worth $400,000. So they're paying taxes on $400,000. I guarantee you, a lot of those folks' pay did not go up that much over that 10 years since they bought that house in 2009, 2010, in the recession that we all lived through. So just keep that in mind when you make your decisions.
Well spoken, Greg. I appreciate it. Anybody else?
Yes, my name is Tim Caberia, and I've lived in Paulding County for about 5 years now. I moved here from a place that really knows very high taxes. I moved from the Washington, D.C. area. And my concern right now is looking at the taxes. I can see, of course, it may not be at exactly the same rate, but it's a similar trajectory. It's like just keeps going up. And of course, I'm not ignorant of the fact that there is inflation, there are all these other factors to consider. But like Greg said, I think it is absolutely important that, like families have to do, we're gonna have to cut on some things. And for example, bought our house in 2021. At that time, it was about a $300,000 house, a new development. The other day, I got a letter from the assessor with a 33% increase in the property tax, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, I don't want to repeat what he said, but it's like, my sources of income didn't go up anywhere near 33%. So however much I try to reconcile that, it's not gonna work for me in any way whatsoever. And my suggestion is was listening to her and the budget she gave for maintenance and operations, like 17%. And I think you mentioned like the sheriff's office, detention facilities. And I was wondering, what does the county do to try and tap on other sources of money other than taxing the residents? Because obviously the sheriff's office has to be maintained. That is not the question. The detention facilities, for example, if we look at the federal government, the Department of Homeland Security, for instance, and I know a little bit about that because I work for them, there is a lot of, they've been working around the clock trying to partner with counties for, let's say, detention facilities. And there is money that Paulding County could probably try and go for. And at least we get some money from that. We don't have to put the whole burden on the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Good evening. My name is Ron Dennison, and I've been a Paulding County resident for a long time. And I'm just kind of concerned that, when I got these tax assessments, in the past 2 years, my property value has gone up 20% each year. And I'm just concerned that, with the millage rate, I understand that, the operating expenses of the county government, it's going to increase every year. I can see a percentage, 8% or whatever, but this is, to me, it's alarming that some people, like, say, what's going to happen the next year? Another 20% increase in my assessment of taxes? I just think it's kind of getting, proportional, with inflation. I think it's just kind of alarming, and I think that sometimes, rising prices, it's going to shock these taxpayers, and I think that I myself, I'm not happy about it, and as everybody else is, but I just think that, I want the board to be cognizant that, I think that sometimes, it's concerning and alarming to the citizens. And for myself, I just, but I just appreciate you letting me voice my opinion on this, and thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Some good thoughts. Others? If there
Hi everyone, my name is Jimmy Manor. I have lived in Paulding County most of my life, and after college my wife and I moved back here and purchased a home in 2017. Since that time, the value of our house has increased almost 50%. Even with the millage rate reductions, our annual tax bill has increased by over 30%. And then on top of that, with the inflation and all, we're looking at a huge increase in our tax bill. The idea of not rolling back the millage rate when the entire rest of the country and this community is being impacted by the same inflation is just, in my view, absurd. we don't get that luxury. We're all having to tighten our belt, and then you guys are proposing, hey, let's take more of that money. It's really, really aggravating, and I don't think it's something that's truly in the best interest of Paulding County. I think that it's going to do two things. Like you were talking about, it's going to slow down the growth, A, and B, you're going to price residents out of Paulding County, and they're going to start looking further afield, whether it's in Alabama, even out of state, where there's not necessarily a lower millage rate, to your point, but the property values aren't as high, so the tax burden is the same or less than what they're used to. And I think that if we look at the budget, I mean, the proposed property tax income difference between last year's budget and this year's budget is only 3%. So why we're talking about raising it 14% is a little confusing to me. I'm not sure where that additional funds are going to go. I don't think that has been made clear as far as where we're going to be using that specifically. So, thank you for your time.
Going, gone. Anybody else want to step forward? If no one else wishes to speak tonight, I want to remind everyone that our staff's going to stay here. Chris there in the nice sport coat there is with community development. Erica's with DOT. Scott's got water, DOT, and community development. You know, Tava's our comptroller or director of finance, and Rebecca probably doesn't want to address any of the finance. She's our county clerk, and so her specialty is in administrative works. And then we'll be up here too. So this time I'll close out the public hearing. Thank you again for bringing us your thoughts and sharing that with us. Believe me, you know, we vote in August, but we take what you say to heart. It'd probably be interesting to go down the line here and for us to say the percentage that our properties went up. And we have with us here our chief tax appraiser, James Stokes. James, you want to raise your hand? He doesn't try to hide. He's got his name badge on there. So he's over all the assessment piece. He can tell you what's going on all around the state as far as other tax assessment goes, which is pretty much exactly what's going on here, right? So he's here, and again, just thank you for being here. So at this time, we'll close out the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Commissioner Caker. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Galloway. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.